I'm so glad that you could tune in today for Designing for All Ages, Aging in Place, and Intergenerational Homes. As Chris mentioned, my name is Rachel Fawcett, and I work as the Housing Affordability Specialist for the Pennsylvania Housing Research Center at Penn State. So this webinar will just serve as one piece of the puzzle when it comes to thinking about aging in place or supporting the needs of intergenerational households. And our goal with this webinar is that you leave with just a greater awareness of designing and modifying homes to support the needs for all ages and abilities. So let's go through a quick overview for the webinar. So first, we're going to start by I'll be defining some key terms in the conversation, make sure we're all on the same page. Second, we will come to understand the occupants for aging in place and intergenerational households. Third, we'll assess the current and future needs for these households. Consider this your market research. Fourth, we will learn about the best practices to design for new construction. And lastly, we'll also discuss modifications and challenges that can occur for retrofit applications. So all that said, let's continue on and get on the same page when it comes to some key definitions. So our key definitions for today are we'll start with aging in place or age-friendly housing. So these are terms that are used to describe a person living in a residence of their choice for as long as they are able as they age while maintaining a quality of life. So it's also that concept of adapting your home and lifestyle to provide a safe and healthy living environment as you age. Because for all of us, the only thing that can stop us from aging is death. As my high school CAD teacher, Mr. Mizikar, used to remind us, our only certainties in life are death and taxes. So also thanks to Benjamin Franklin for that idiom, if you've heard it before. But let's jump now into intergenerational or multi-generational households. So according to the Pew Research Center, these are homes simply with two or more adult generations in them. So two or more adult generations. And then looking at accessibility, this is a term I'm sure most of you have heard. Often accessibility is equated with being ADA compliant, so ADA meaning the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is for public accommodations, so what is required for a building or facility to be physically accessible to people with disabilities. So this is just simply a minimum for access to spaces, but in a spirit of hospitality, we're going to aim for a little more when it comes to our housing. Next, we're going to jump into visitability. So this is defined that a home can be lived in or visited by people who have trouble with steps or who use wheelchairs or walkers. There are three basic requirements that define a visitable location. So that includes one, a zero-step entrance. Two, doors have a width of 32 inches with clear passage space or more. And also there is one bathroom on the main floor that can be accessed by a wheelchair. So again, these are all valuable requirements, pieces to include in our homes. But again, we're going to look at how can we do a little more, and we're going to take the next step and look at universal design. So from architect Ronald Mace, who coined the term in 1997, universal design is design that is usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So this term is kind of our broadest sense for a home that is usable and marketable to almost everybody. So it seeks to incorporate products and features that are easily usable and commonly available. So now that we're on the same page regarding some of the terms that I'll be using, let's understand the occupants who are living in aging households and multi-generational households. So first, let's look a bit at our life expectancy here in the US. Good news for us, we're seeing increased life expectancy. From the graph on the left, as of 2024, at birth, both sexes have an average life expectancy of 79. Even better news, if you make it to age 65, for both sexes, your average life expectancy increases to 84.7. As you may see on the chart, females do see a slightly higher life expectancy than males. And you also may be wondering, why are we seeing life expectancy increasing? A few reasons are due to healthier lifestyles, specialized medicine, increased technology, and focused care. So now, understanding that our life expectancy is increasing, what are we seeing as our market size for generations? So nationally, we see the average median age is 39.2. from the 2024 American Community Survey's one-year estimates. And in Pennsylvania, though, we see that average median age is actually older than the US. So for Pennsylvania, ours is 41.2. And if you look at the table and the graph on the right of the slide, actually we have over 27% of Pennsylvanians are age 60 and up versus 24% in the US. So knowing that Pennsylvania has an aging population, it's also valuable to note that 24 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties have more senior citizens, so those who are 65 years and older, than youth, those who are 20 and older. So on the right, we see a map of Pennsylvania from the Center for Rural Pennsylvania. You can see the Pennsylvania counties highlighted in green, which have more senior citizens than youth. So why aging in place? We understand Pennsylvania is aging. We have a decently high aging population. We understand that most people actually want to remain in their current homes as long as possible, and this includes also being able to accommodate long-term care if they need it. People want accessible features that they can age with. And aging in place does matter because so often our homes really offer a lot to us. So they offer our social attachments like our neighbors, our family, our friends. Typically, our homes are a familiar physical environment. It's a place we know and have cared about and understand the layout. And often, aging in place would offer lower costs rather than moving into an assisted care facility. So we understand that Pennsylvania as a people is aging, but Pennsylvania as a housing stock is also aging. So the data we're seeing here is from an analysis compiled by Construction Coverage from the U.S. Census Bureau's 2024 American Community Survey, their one-year estimates. So on the right, you can see a map of the United States highlighting the median home age in each state. You can tend to see that states in the Northeast and Midwest are actually seeing some of the oldest housing stock in the nation. Here in Pennsylvania, our median home age is actually 58, and the median year that was built is 1966. So, 66.3% of our homes were built before 1980, which admittedly was before my lifetime. And I would bet that the 24.8% of homes that were built before 1940 were before most of your lifetimes. In fact, we only see that 7.3% of homes in Pennsylvania were built after 2010. And for context, why this kind of matters, we didn't see statewide enforcement of the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code until 2004. So a lot of our homes predate that enforcement of our modern building codes that we see today. So now that we kind of understand Pennsylvania's aging population, our aging housing, let's look at what it means to be living in a multi-generational household. So as we heard before from the Pew Research Center, adults in multi-generational households includes those who are ages 25 or older and are living either with a parent or a grandparent or living with an adult child or grandchild age 25 or older. So again, households with two or more adult generations living in them would be considered multi-generational. And we often see right now that for young adults, so those younger than 40, that typically men are more likely than women to live in a multi-generational household. It's not a huge difference, but there is a little bit of a difference. You can see on the graph on the right showing the breakdown by age and the split by men and women living in multi-generational households. And also in the United States, we're seeing that multi-generational households are actually growing. So again, from the Pew Research Center, multi-generational households have been sharply increasing over the past 5 decades. You can see from the graph on the right, in 1971, we saw under 5% of our population. At that point, less than 15 million people living in multi-generational households. Now, this data is from 2021. We're seeing that 18% of the US population, or more than 59 million people, are living in multi-generational households. So this has been a growing trend that we've been seeing over the decades. And you might be wondering, why are people living multi-generationally? I think, well, for starters, it's practical. Some of those reasons might include financial issues, adult caregiving, it might just be an existing arrangement, and childcare needs. It can also offer emotional benefits for folks, like it's convenient, it's rewarding. But that said, benefits aren't always equal across the generations, across the folks living in these situations. Often we'll see adults living with parents are more likely than parents living with adult children to say that their living situation is stressful, all or most of the time. So we all experience our living arrangements differently. But it's important to note that some folks, this is a reality and this is the household they live in. So now that we understand Pennsylvania's aging population, our aging housing stock, and the growing trend for multi-generational living, let's assess our current and future needs for those who are seeking to age in place or to live in an intergenerational household. So while these groups do have some unique needs, there are also a variety of overlaps that we see in shared needs. So for instance, when we're thinking about these groups, we're also considering how temporary or long-term disabilities are affecting our households. My hope is that your imagination and creativity are stirred as you're just thinking about every human you encounter and how their needs can be better met in a home. So jumping into that, when it comes to aging in place, know that there are a few different approaches. So one, we're kind of looking at planning ahead for future needs. So this is when you're designing or modifying your home in advance, knowing that aging and changing abilities are a future reality. Two, we'll see preparing for upcoming needs due to a progressive condition. So you know that specific needs are going to happen, and you are designing or modifying with those expectations in mind. So again, a future certainty that will come to pass. And then three, we also see adapting for immediate and necessary changes. So these could be needs that are occurring now, and the changes must be made to allow someone in the home to continue to thrive there. So keep these three approaches in mind as you hear about the various strategies and ideas for new construction and retrofit applications. So just to reiterate, why does this kind of all matter? We heard from Senator Bob Casey that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65, but less than 5% of the national housing supply is accessible. So with less, and then even more so, with less than 1% of that housing stock is accessible to wheelchair users. So in fact, about 26% of our US population, or around 61 million people, have a disability. Approximate, and with that, we recognize that approximately 70% of Americans are living in single-family homes. And I think most of us probably understand that single-family homes do not have requirements to be accessible, visitable, or considering universal design principles. Those only come into play if the occupant or the designer decides to incorporate strategies to keep these needs and these ideas in mind. So just to reiterate, some of our occupant needs and numbers, we're seeing more than 1 in 4 adults in the US have a disability. In Pennsylvania specifically, we see 27.7% of adults have a disability. And disabilities can span a variety of areas. These can include cognitive, hearing, mobility, vision, self-care, and independent living. Also, disabilities can be temporary or permanent. Think through surgery, injuries, congenital disorders. I know I've seen numerous family members go through hip and knee replacements with their recovery time. Some folks just have to adjust to their bodies aging in their homes. Others maybe have been injured playing a sport and are now forced to use crutches. So just think through these. This is a need that we all have, and I can guarantee that we all know somebody who can benefit. So with that, matters just because it impacts our full human life cycle of how we live and how we use our homes. It's not just about aging or disabilities, but it's also about life changes. Think about the birth or adoption of a baby or a child, whether you're pushing a stroller or walking with a toddler. Those can be a little more challenging than just walking through yourself in a space or also caregiving, whether that's for a child or an adult that comes with additional needs, whether it's moving through spaces or just assisting with daily life. And also recognize that people come in all shapes and sizes. I know that I can often reach the top shelf in most places, but this is not possible for my aunt, who's a little shorter than I am. So we recognize that our bodies have different abilities as they are. And then finally, our homes should just overall be a place of safety and belonging. So we want to be sure our designs are considering hospitality and being able to welcome all people into a home. So with that, I know those abstract ideas, they can be a little more difficult to articulate in a design, but we do have several concrete things that we can that are easy to understand when it comes to design. And here are a few. There are several when it comes to mobility considerations. So that's keeping in mind things like canes, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, whether they're manual or power, scooters. So what about these things do you think might impact the design? Why does it matter that we understand that someone in the home might be using these? Some, they need stability. So thinking through that, our floor surfaces matter. Others may need more maneuverability. So that affects the widths of our doorways, our hallways, and areas for turning. So just a little teaser for what's to come when it comes to our design best practices. Also, we have some sensory considerations to include. So we have different abilities when it comes to hearing, sight, smell, taste, touch, the five senses. Now, some of these might affect design more than others. Like we're probably not going around tasting most features of our home. But I think most of us really just don't realize how much we rely on our senses until we experience the loss of one. And then additionally, there are also other impairments to anticipate, especially when we're thinking through aging households and multi-generational households. So these could include short-term or long-term memory loss, alertness or responsivity in situations, and also just orientation of one's awareness, and their surroundings. So now that we've come to understand aging and intergenerational households and their various needs, we'll move on to discuss how those needs then translate into home design. So now we're going to next take a look at some best practices, design best practices when it comes to new construction. So we're going to learn about best practices for designing for inclusivity when it comes to different abilities and different ages. So first, if you remember, our one of our key terms early on was the concept of universal design. So here we're just going to talk a bit more about its seven principles and kind of how we apply them in housing. So universal design, the seven principles, they begin with equitable use. So the home is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities, that it is flexibility, there's flexibility in use. So for this, we would see the home being able to accommodate a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. Also simple and intuitive to use. So the home would be easy to understand regardless of experience, knowledge, language skills, or concentration. There's perceptible information. So the home design should be able to communicate necessary information effectively, regardless of ambient conditions like lighting and things, or sensory abilities of the occupant. There's a tolerance for error, so that a home design is able to minimize hazards and consequences of unintended actions or accidents in the home. Low physical effort. We want to try and create home designs that offer features that can be used efficiently and comfortably, but with a minimum of fatigue. And then size and space for approach and use. This is regardless of one's size, posture, or mobility that they're able to be using the space. So you may be wondering how and where do we shift these from principles to design strategies and opportunities? So for the how, let's consider these three design strategies for designing homes that are age-friendly and promote thriving for intergenerational households. So the three design strategies that we're going to think about are space, flexibility, and accessibility. So for space, do we have adequate space in the home or what we are designing? For flexibility, can the space be used by a variety of users and in different ways? This is especially important when we're thinking about different generations using spaces. We have different hopes, dreams, goals in our houses. And also accessibility. Can everyone access what they need to thrive in the home? So building from those design strategies, let's think through the where. So we're going to consider the areas for design opportunities in a home. so that it is intentionally designed to be age-friendly and again promoting thriving for an intergenerational household. So some of these key areas include our site orientation, our site access, the entrance of the home, our overall floor plan, our doors and hallways. So how are we moving throughout the spaces? Our windows, how are we connecting to the environment and the world around us? Our flooring, the surfaces we're walking on or moving over, our lighting and outlets, some technology that we can potentially incorporate into our houses, our bathroom or bathrooms, the kitchen, and then bedrooms within a space. So first, let's look at our site orientation. So we're looking at new construction. So we're thinking that we have the capacity, the ability to decide how the home is oriented on the site. So when it comes to that, when we're looking at a site, we really want to consider what is the home's shape, what is our climate that we're in, what is the sun exposure, and what would the shading be that is affecting that house. So ideally, we want to be orienting homes in a north-south position. So this helps to optimize exposure to solar energy, but also minimizing overheating from the low-angled east-west sun. But this also requires that we're properly placing windows and overhangs to help control solar exposure during hot times of the year and the day. We all know our Pennsylvania climate experiences quite the range in temperature shifts. So trying to accommodate how we can best work with the land and with our environment is helpful. Also, it's valuable to minimize east and west facing exposures because this can help reduce glare from our rising or setting sun. So things like this really come into play for folks with low vision or if you have aging eyes. It's just a more comfortable experience to not be getting that glare. So this reminds us that we should be protecting our building entrances. Is there some kind of overhang that can help protect that space? So moving from how the home is located on the site, we think through how do we actually access that home on a site? First off, do we have a visible house number so someone can find your home? Always helpful. Even better if it is illuminated as well. So thinking through, we've now located the house on the site, but how do we actually get to it? Whether that is in a vehicle or whether that is just as a person. We want to ideally aim for driveways and parking that is a flat surface or just has a very minimal cross slope. Ideally, that there's parking located near the main entrance. And that said, also, if you are thinking through aging households, folks who are in caregiving roles, we want to make sure we're including space to exit our vehicles. So it's not enough to just have space for a vehicle to park, but we need to be thinking through a minimum of 5 feet of space for folks to exit vehicles as well. And then you can see here in the image on the right, what do we think about now once we have exited a vehicle or we've arrived at the house? How do we actually get there? So the image on the right shows a sloped walkway to access this house. So there was no need for a step then to access it. So we want to make sure to consider, is there a possibility to include a ramp or a graded system rather than including a step? So this goes back to the comment that we made earlier discussing visitable housing, that there would be an entrance with a 0 step or a non-step entry, which we'll talk a little bit about that, a little more about that later on. And also thinking through your widths. So ideally that our widths for our walkways are at least a 36-inch minimum, but again, more is preferred when you're thinking about maybe I'm helping one of my nieces walk up the walkway. We need more space than 36 inches to fit both of us. And also thinking through what are your surface textures? Are they non-slip? Materials that someone can easily stay stable on, regardless of their age or their abilities. And also, finally, we have multi-sensory cues. So thinking along with non-slip textures, and we can also incorporate colors to indicate we are walking up the walkway to the home. Like the walkway to the home is one color, and then we get to a different area, the color or texture may also change to kind of indicate differences in spaces. So understanding now how there are different options and opportunities for accessing a home, let's think through how do we actually enter it. So we touched on a bit earlier with site orientation, the benefits of having a protected entry. But just to reiterate again, the covered entry door, it helps protect us from inclement weather in Pennsylvania. I know I do not enjoy getting snow or rain on me as I'm entering a house. I can't imagine anyone does. But it's also beneficial for folks who might take a little longer entering. And here again, we want to be seeing door widths that are at least 32 inches with the door swinging completely away from the doorway. So it is out of that pathway to get through. 36 inches would be better, but a 32-inch minimum. Also, to be sure to include lighting. While this picture on the right is not lit in the best manner, it is also helpful to have lighting available at night for anyone to be able to see where they are going. And then again, that mention of the one non-step or zero-step entrance. Ideally, you do want this to be the main entrance for folks, so they are able to arrive as any guest or occupant would at the house. But this does also add in some additional thinking through maybe your garage is used as your primary entrance, and that's how you're accessing the home. Um, you'll need, in that case, to consider additional space for movement around vehicles. Someone who has mobility assistance cannot get through the same space as someone who's just walking themselves in a garage. So all of these things need to be considered when you're making choices. And then also when we're thinking about easy access, that comes down to the hardware that we're seeing on the door. The little inset picture includes a lever door handle, which would be a recommendation to use, as opposed to the other door handle in the larger picture. Sort of a knob would be a bit more of a challenge versus a lever style or even electronic locks that could be operated with a fingerprint or a phone. We're just thinking through who all can use the space, what are their abilities, and what do they need to get into the space. Um, so thinking through your easy access, are you someone carrying a load of groceries? Are you navigating a doorway with a toddler or stroller? Are you someone coming in with a wheelchair? You need to have the clear approach entering your door, but then also to be able to use the door in an easy manner. Thinking through your doorbell height, that should also be at 48 inches maximum, so all folks are able to reach it. Um, and another note that we talked about on the last slide as well, thinking through our non-slip surfaces. If you do have an extra rug like this one in front, just make sure it is secure and it's not something that could be moved or hinder someone's ability to enter a home. So I've mentioned it a few times, but when it comes to the entrance, having a non-step or a zero-step entrance is quite important. And conveniently, Chris did a webinar in 2018 where he talked through three specific construction details that can help you create that entrance. So looking at cribbing the flooring system, or hanging the joist with top flange joist hangers, or insulated concrete forms. You can find details and more explanations. One of the drawings is here on the slide from Chris. But if you check out his webinar, Revisiting Visitability, Design and Constructability Issues, it includes all of those details. So I recommend that if that is a detail that you've not worked with before when it comes to entering a home. Chris has kindly already gone through the legwork there for you to detail it and outline how you can make that work coming into your home. So jumping from there, we're going to think about the overall floor plan for a house. So when we're thinking through visitability, we mentioned before that we want to see the main floor having that zero non-step entrance, but also it has a bathroom that is accessible. But when we're thinking through universal design principles and aging in place, we would also really hope that we're seeing a bedroom, the kitchen, the laundry area, so that all of the main facilities that would be used by an occupant would be located on that main floor. So you don't reach a situation where Maybe you've got an older in your home, your bedrooms are all upstairs, while your kitchen, your bathroom, your laundry is all on the first floor. So we just want to make sure that you still have proximity to those necessary pieces of the home, even if your mobility needs change. Um, so this also allows us for visibility, but it also allows sufficient one-story living. So accommodates a wide variety of folks. On the slide, you can see an image of an example floor plan of a decently sized home, we'll say, from a couple who intentionally designed their home to be one that they could age in. And the image on the top right is also an image of the front of the home. You can see the sloped walkway while still maintaining a covered entrance that is also featuring a zero-step entrance. So moving on from our floor plan, let's actually go into our homes. So we're looking at our doors and our hallways, so how we're navigating through spaces. Um, so before, I had mentioned before about a doorway width, it should be at least 32 inches, but 36 inches would be more recommended, just to allow for ease of use and access by different folks. But it's also important, don't forget to think about the weight of the door. Interior door hinges, the hinge doors, they shouldn't be requiring more than 5 pounds of force to operate. And then for exterior hinge doors, we don't want to see those exceed more than 8.5 pounds of force to operate. So it's not just the size of the door, it's also what is the weight of the door and the force needed to open it. Um, but then also the door hardware. So is it a handle and lock that's operable with a closed fist or with minimal effort, or is it something that needs more than that? This also includes thinking through the texture and the finish. Are our door handles smooth? Are they ergonomic? Often a good choice and recommendation that I mentioned earlier is one that is a lever type door handle. Um, I mean, think about if you're someone carrying your groceries in or you have full hands, like that can even be accessed with an elbow. It has options for using it. And then also we need to be thinking about the space around our room entrances. So we need to allow for adequate maneuvering space. So at a minimum, this is a space to allow for a clear approach to the door, but also maneuvering around it, getting through it, and accessing the spaces beyond that. And once we get through our doors, we're looking into our hallways, and we want to be seeing them finished at least from 42 to 48 inches in width, just to again allow for sufficient movement throughout spaces in the home. So now that we have defined our entrances and our accesses to various points of the home, we're going to think through the windows. Um, so the windows are often how we're seeing outside to nature, how we're getting daylight, having that connection. So again, this is thinking through what is the window type that I'm selecting. Is it a window type that can be used by a variety of users? So this comes to the operating mechanisms. So are they within reach? Are those accessible? This includes also thinking through where the locks are located on a window. While some windows, like I would just be pushing them up from the bottom, double hung, its lock could be in a higher position that might not be accessible to other folks. Um, a potential idea for folks to use are casement windows, having a lever mechanism that is at a lower height that anyone can turn. Um, and push open. Another consideration, though, to keep in mind is what is that balance between ease of use for any ages or abilities, but also safety. If you are in a home with children in it, you do need to think through, okay, well, if it's at a certain height and it's accessible to more people, this also may mean that a child can access it who you don't want to. So it's just beneficial to keep in mind, thinking through who are the users that could be using the space, how are we benefiting our access, but also how are we holding that intention with what our safety and security needs when it comes to keeping family members safe as well. Um, And also with Windows, we have the consideration when it comes to operability and weight of the windows. Are they not exceeded 5 pounds in pressure, whether we're operating them as sliders, yeah, side to side or vertically. We just want to make sure that they are not exceeding what most folks are able to move. Um, and then finally thinking through, once we've decided what are all the different operating features, how is the window actually in the space? So thinking through its sill height, um, lower sills can offer an equal view experience for those who are shorter or those who are seated. So they're able to also experience the world as the rest of us are. But again, balancing safety concerns. If you have a younger child, you may not want a window as low as the one in this picture for sure. It just depends who are you designing this home for, and who will be using the spaces. So moving from our windows to our flooring, this kind of ties into what we were discussing when we were looking at the exterior. So we're using flooring changes. They can indicate transitions or alerts to entrances or stairs. So this is specifically helpful for folks with who may have vision-related access needs, being able to detect that texture change through a cane or maybe through your feet. Thinking about folks who do not have vision issues, also color changes can be an option, um, that we can see the difference in different areas. And again, you'll hear this again and again in every space, but consider slip-resistant floor throughout the home, and fixed flooring rather than situations like area rugs, or things that can move, whether it's someone moving through space quickly or could be getting caught up in a mobility device. Um, I know I have seen some of my grandparents and even my parents now with balance, and that does not improve as you get older. So just be sure, how can we be thinking through those needs in our spaces? And also when we think about our flooring, different colors, different textures create a palette that offers clarity when it comes to navigating our spaces, but it's also just a more interesting environment that I think is beneficial to all of us when it comes to understanding and using our spaces well. So moving now from our floor back to our walls, let's think through our lighting and outlets. So as we're using our spaces, any room, probably the first thing you go in when you go into a room is you use a light switch, unless it's a room with automatic lighting. But light switches, we have a variety of types. The rocker style is quite effective in being usable for a variety of abilities, ages, and types. And height, you often want to see that at about 48 inches maximum, just so folks are able to reach it. And then the same goes with outlets. You would like to see those at least 18 to 24 inches from the floor. So again, someone who is seated is able to access them at different heights. But like we mentioned before, there is the balance of safety when it comes to kids or other users. So just be sure to keep those things in mind when you're making these design choices. Another consideration in spaces, especially in rooms like your kitchen or like high use rooms, is to consider layered lighting and task lighting. Um, so that you might have light that just kind of gives light to light the overall space so you can move through it. But then also consider more task lighting that may be under the cabinets or at different heights, just for when different folks are using areas, they have the light that they need to see. We can see in the picture on the right, this one has a floor lamp that is kind of a higher light, but it also has a table lamp just to provide additional lighting when someone is seated in the corner. So moving on from our lighting and outlets, we also nowadays we have technology, sometimes probably more than some of us want, but they do offer a lot of benefits, especially if you have aging family members living in a home and you might not live nearby. You may find some safety features of technology to be a benefit. So these could be door alerts. You could have a doorbell camera You could have doors that are automated when it comes to locking, or maybe even motion light sensors on the exterior of your home. So when a person would approach, they would be able to see the door. We also have the ability to connect our smartphones, our laptops, our devices to a variety of features in our homes. This could be our generic light bulbs. It could be your thermostat to be adjusting your settings. That can also come into play for energy efficiency, and also our appliances. I have some friends that they can control their oven with their phone, which it scares me a little bit. I'm not that, yeah, it's a feature that's probably not for me, but for some folks that may be useful. If you have a relative whose memory is starting to shift and you want to make sure certain appliances are off, you will have that ability now. So these can be features that can be beneficial for folks in their homes. And then let's now look into a few of our specific rooms in the house that have a higher need and or a more that we should be looking into. So when we're looking at our bathrooms, as you heard before, we want to make sure that we have at least one on our main floor that is accessible. Ideally, this was even better if this is a full bathroom, so one that can allow for using the toilet, but also bathing. So with that, we want to make sure that it is a space that has grab bars, that it can accommodate the use of a mobility device. So we're seeing at least a space of 30 inches by 48 inches for maneuverability, but also ideally a turnaround area that could accommodate a wheelchair, whether it's the 5-foot turning radius or more of the T-shaped diagram that you'll see from ADA. Um, these are all things that, if you were doing this from the start, would be ideal to have. That said, some folks may just want to prepare for the future that may come. So you can install blocking already in your wall cavities for future grab bars. So on the image on the right, you can see blocking that has been pre-installed in a bathroom, and then it is ready to have grab bars installed in the future. Um, Also, when thinking through the various pieces of our bathroom, so we have our main feature of our toilet, thinking through the chair height option, which is more around 17 to 19 inches versus the standard 14 to 15 inches. It is just easier to accommodate folks who may not be able to bend as far, or who may need extra assistance getting up. Also, bidets are becoming more commonplace now in the United States that may be beneficial for hygiene needs when it comes to changing aging adults and family members. Um, and then moving from our toilet to our sink, we have the ability to get vanities with if you can get a pedestal vanity, so it has the knee clearance, but you could also consider a vanity with removable panels. And as we've mentioned before, to consider a faucet with a single lever handle. So something that anyone is able to pull and adjust. Um, and if you do have the ability in the bathroom on your main floor to include a shower or tub, there are a variety of options that can make this accessible to folks. I mean, the bare minimum would be starting with like a handheld adjustable shower head, but also then thinking through, do we have the option for a roll-in shower tub feature, or something like this image here where it does not have a set dividing door. You can just roll on in. Um, and I cannot say it enough, but to consider using slip-resistant flooring, especially in your bathroom. I believe that most falls are occurring typically in bathrooms and kitchens, those higher traffic spaces, where the flooring, yeah, could be more slippery when wet or when other materials are on it. Um, so moving from our bathroom then to think through to our kitchen. For the kitchen, again, we're thinking through who all is using the space. So we're thinking through our layouts and our work surfaces. So how many folks are using this kitchen? If you are in an intergenerational household, you may have kids, you may have older adults. So thinking through how are we all navigating the space? How are we prepping our food? A great idea is to consider including varied height cabinets or countertops, or even in this photo, you see a fold down work surface. So it would offer a 32-inch height option as opposed to the typical 36-inch countertop. Um, these allow for more users to be using the space, but also to use it depending on their height or their access to it. Another consideration is to think through contrasting edge banding on a countertop. So this helps folks with lower vision. In the pictures, you'll see this does not include that. But if you're able to have a contrasting edge banding on your countertop, it can help folks who are trying to differentiate between the countertop and the floor. It will also help out at nighttime, even if you have not lower vision needs. And then when we're also thinking through our appliances, our cabinets, how are we thinking through how they're opening, how they're being used in the space? If I'm in a wheelchair, am I still able to open the oven? Is there space for me to approach and to open it and to access it? With how the kitchen is laid out. For cabinets, as we talked about the lever hardware on faucets and door handles, for cabinets, a good idea to think about is a D-style cabinet. It's a little easier than a knob to pull. Um, also, as you can see in the image on the right, a pull-out drawer or shelves or those with lazy Susans are a little easier to navigate than cabinets that are deep that you just pile items in. Um, and then finally, jumping over to our sink, again, thinking through the hardware on it, that single lever, thinking through the depth of it, what can be navigated from someone who's seated or someone who's standing, and then also like the bathroom, what is the clearance under the sink? A lot of cabinets can offer options that have removable base cabinets, so they might have that cabinets now and have that extra storage you want, but say later you need to be able to use that space for someone who's in a wheelchair. Some cabinets have the option to remove those base cabinets. Um, and then jumping to our bedroom, this one we'll just touch on briefly. But again, you just want to be able to have one of these on the main floor if possible, to be considering maneuverability, so those can, with mobile devices, can get around. Be thinking through your closet design. So do you have lower closet rods? Is there lighting? Is the door opening of an adequate width? And then the same with, as we saw in the cabinets in the kitchen, do you have furniture with easy pull handles and reachable drawers? Um, and then finally, also just think through the proximity to the bathroom. Um, as our bodies change, our needs change, and this can be a helpful feature for us as we're aging or when we're caregiving to have that access. So I won't spend long on these, but here are just a few examples that if you download the handouts, you can see universal design being incorporated throughout the US. If your community has any strategies or standards for universal design or aging in place, please share them in the chat. I think it's awesome to learn from each other. We can see here from different parts throughout the US, either encouraging or requiring different housing options to include these ideas. And then University of Buffalo actually has a center that has a lovely handout that kind of provides some best practices when you're going through design. So finally, we are going to wrap up quickly, discussing about potential challenges for these concepts when we're thinking through modifications and retrofit applications. Um, So for this, again, we're thinking through what are the current needs for the occupants that are already in the home, what may be potential future needs. But if we are retrofitting while folks are in the home, we need to be aware of their needs. They might be occupying the space. What do they still need access to? But also, do we need to be concerned about any health issues if we're doing modifications while they're in there? This could be impacting the air quality, their accessibility to different spaces. So if you are working in someone's home, you just want to be mindful of your dust, your debris. How are we protecting floors, but also protecting them in a way that someone can still maneuver through spaces? And do they have access to a restroom or an alternative? Um, and we talked about earlier on, like how we can incorporate these design strategies into new construction, because we'll see here when it comes to retrofitting an existing home, there are additional barriers that may not have been there if this was done in the first place. So this might include financially, just the cost itself can be prohibitive. The site your home is on, it just might not be possible to create a visitable entrance, especially in Pennsylvania with our hills. There also may be other constraints, like do you actually have the square footage to make modifications in your home? Do you have the blocking already in your walls for grab bars? Do you know how a contractor can access the different parts of your home, whether it's the electric, the plumbing, the HVAC? So thinking through that, we're just going to touch on a few considerations as to why, if possible, it's helpful to consider these strategies in new construction, but just to be aware of if someone is approaching them as a retrofit. When it comes to financial concerns, the modifications can vary quite greatly depending on your home, what you're looking to do, the space. National average is around $9,500. And looking at the minimum, more around the 350. So maybe that's just adding grab bars. But again, money varies quite greatly depending on your scope of your project and what the location is. So what is the age of the home that's being worked with? What are the mechanisms that are being updated? So Fixer is an awesome website that has a decent amount of being able to try and estimate what those remodeling costs may be. We'll look here again that the modifications can vary in cost. So a good thing to think through is what is actually necessary now. Like the top we'll see here on the chart on the right is kind of like what are our lower barrier options when it comes to financials towards like options increasing in price. So the installation of a grab bar is a very different experience than adding in a walk-in tub. Um, so thinking through that, we're just going to touch on quickly the design strategies we mentioned before. Do we have the space? Do we have flexibility in our spaces? And do folks have access to things? So when you're looking at overall modifications in a home, can you incorporate wider doors and hallways? Can you incorporate no-step thresholds like you see here in the images? Can you incorporate switches that are at a proper height and the same for outlets? And also easy to use hardware. So looking at your cabinets, your faucets, your doors, your handles, are they options that can be easily used by either a closed fist or uh, for other folks as well. So these could be levers, D-style drawer pulls, or rocker switches. As we're looking in our kitchens, can you adjust for variable or adjustable counter heights? Do folks have access to appliances? Do they have the maneuverability they need? Or the cabinets and shelving that can actually be used by different abilities? And then for our bathrooms, here's kind of just a quick, what are some of the initial things you'll see folks when you're looking to do an age-in-place remodeling, whether that's replacing your faucet for a single lever option, getting a vanity with knee clearance, adding grab bars, which again, don't forget the blocking. Maybe it's just as simple as adding a handheld adjustable shower head or a bidet attachment to a toilet, but it also may be a larger modification in terms of modifying or replacing a tub or shower. Here on the right, you see modifying an existing tub to become a roll-in tub. And also thinking through your flooring, is it slip resistant? So I know that was a very quick run through on the modifications, but a lot of this is just to get you thinking about how you can incorporate aging in place and intergenerational living design strategies throughout a home. Um, we want you to understand that this benefits all of us. So it benefits all of our access, whether it's meeting our diverse needs and abilities. It can benefit folks financially, so it can help boost your home value. And if you're able to do this from the start, it can also help you save on future renovations. It can also help folks' quality of life to support independent living, to staying in one's home. It can also improve the marketability of our housing, offering a broader appeal for outreach that more folks are able to live in this house. And finally, safety can offer us independence for various ages. But also, as I mentioned before, don't forget to navigate the tension between safety and ease of use, while also maintaining safety for children or other users who might need additional assistance. So in summary, Pennsylvania's population and housing stock are aging. Also, more than 1 in 4 Pennsylvanians have a disability, and our multi-generational households are increasing. So, with all of these facts in mind, it behooves us to create homes that are supporting aging in place, that are supporting multi-generations. So this means we want to be designing our strategies, thinking through space, thinking through flexibility, and thinking through accessibility. So these design strategies, in the end, they benefit all occupants. Whether or not you would put yourself in one of these categories, you may end up in one of these categories, or someone you care about will be. So we just want to make sure we're designing to kind of serve as many people as possible and to think through the lifetime of people and of our buildings well. So as I said early on, this is kind of a beginning, the tip of the iceberg, as they would say. Here are a number of additional resources for you to check out. So please, if you have not yet, you can download the handouts, and these links are all accessible in there. So it includes past webinars that we have done, other websites for design strategies that may be of use in new construction, and also modification ideas for existing construction.